I know a lot of folks like to point the fingers at PBMs. A PBM is the Pharmacy Benefits Manager. And they're effectively companies that are created to help do the administrative task of negotiating in between the drug manufacturer, the insurance provider, and the pharmacy, like you guys. And that in theory, they're the ones transferring money between parties and negotiating prices and making sure that supplies are provided. And that's kind of the idea of their role, especially because we have such a complex health insurance environment in America, as opposed to other countries where it's just single payer.
The most basic, explanation is that a doctor's office or hospital gets a check directly from Blue Cross or from Cigna or from Aetna. We don't get checks as a pharmacy. Pharmacies don't get checks from Aetna and Blue Cross. They get checks from Express Scripts or CVS Caremark or OptumRx, a PBM. Mm-hmm. So PBMs aren't charities. They're obviously, they're billing the insurance, and there's just literally there are middlemen in the transaction regarding what, and typically in healthcare, is direct. So
yeah. So a patient comes into the pharmacy, they pay their copay, they pay their whatever, $20, you receive that money, but then you bill the PBM for the difference. The PBM pays you, the PBM then charges the insurance company, who then pays the PBM, mm-hmm. right? And theoretically, they're getting a little tiny piece everywhere along, $1 transaction fee or something, and that is how they pay their bills. The reality is, especially as they've grown over the last few years, and we might make some people angry, but PBMs aren't watching this show, so we don't have to worry about it. There are 3 PBMs, you just named them, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, that account for between depending on who you ask, 80 to 90% of all pharmaceutical prescriptions written go through one of those 3. Mm-hmm. OptumRx, Express Scripts, and CVS Caremark. Of course, CVS Caremark, as the name would imply, that is CVS Pharmacies, and it is also owned by Aetna. Express Scripts is owned by Cigna, and OptumRx is owned by United Healthcare. So you have the 3 enormous health insurance companies who own 3 enormous PBMs that control most of the pharmaceuticals in the country. And over the last couple decades or whatever, they have come up with all sorts of creative ways to increase the amount of money they make off of every single prescription that's written. The short version is they make a lot of money doing a lot of things that are kind of squirrely, especially when it comes to independent pharmacies, mm-hmm. Because they can cover the back end for their owned pharmacies. Like CVS owns their CVS Caremark, so it doesn't matter if they lose a little profit at the pharmacy because they make up for it in the PBM. That's not the case for independent pharmacies.
Yes. And back to kind of what we're talking about and how this is affected by PBMs, the vertical integration aspect, which, like Tyler explained, for example, CVS Health, Aetna, and CVS Caremark, the PBM, whenever they're vertically integrated and combined in one company, basically, you lose transparency. So as we're trying to make headway as a country on drug pricing, they can do the accounting however they want. Well, see, it's our insurance company making a ton of money. It's not the
our
PBM.
CVS pharmacies are paying the exact same amount or receiving the same amount as your independent pharmacy is. I don't know what your problem is.
So in terms of the actual role of the PBM's role in healthcare, the vertical integration has hidden it and making it much more difficult to truly understand. Whereas, not all that long ago, they were individual companies and they were under a lot of fire. So it kind of was it was a win-win. All right, we'll partner up with you. We can keep rolling. We'll be able to hide some things and we'll keep going. So before the 60s, medications were not covered under insurance plans. You had health insurance. It was not for medications. Medications, there was much less innovation. Relatively speaking, they were a lot cheaper. It was just a regular consumer good like any other. From the 60s onward, the innovation started to change. Pricing started to go up. Those companies grew. And along with that came, insurances. I'd like to get some insurance for these medications. Makes sense. So instead of the insurances really taking it upon themselves to figure it out, there's all these different classes. There were these companies that started PBMs that said, hey, we got you. We will handle who pays for what, how much it is. We're going to squeeze the pharmacies. We'll get these prices down. We know what stuff costs. We will take care of it. And then, so they filled a role, but in 1970, that was only for 16% of prescriptions.
Wow.
By 2000, it went to 68%. Now we're at 85%.
Yep.
So even in the last 25 years, look at the jump. The other way that PBMs really ingrained themselves in our institution of pharmacy is that in the late 80s, early 90s, we moved to real-time electronic claim submission. So that medication that you get prescribed, you know the answer to your exact copay that does not change. You don't get a bill later like occasionally some of the nebulousness at a doctor's office or at a lab. You don't have that at the pharmacy level and sometimes it's bad news because you have a deductible and why are you charging me $400, but it's real time, fixed and done at that time. But that's a lot of data that needs transmitted. But all of those things have to be, managed by this company.
And that's what the PBMs do.
That's what the PBMs do. So they went from filling a small niche to the niche got a little bigger, and now you need technology, and they became like for a while they were these technology companies, really, because that was not something that the healthcare industry was ready to just jump on board with, and they were on the forefront of kind of forcing their way in there. So you see why they're here, see how it's ballooned, and then again you start. Well, this isn't right. Let's fix it. Let's just shut down these multi-billion-dollar companies' most profitable arm of their business. Let's just clamp on them. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? I'm not saying I have those answers, but I want just so you understand maybe what's going on.
Yeah. And the primary PBM defense, what they always say is, look, we're the only ones in the position and with the power to push back on pharmaceutical companies who are the ones charging all these insane list prices. If it weren't for PBMs, nobody would push back on that price, and then people would just be in trouble. That's what they're saying. Obviously, that's not strictly speaking true, especially considering the free market would decide what the fair value for a product is. Either it's going to get paid for or it's not. And if it's not, then the price either comes down or the company goes out of business. But that's their defense. I'm trying to steel man the argument here and be nice to them as best I can.
What gets muddy is because they're a big business. There are times when they put so if you have 3 medications that all do pretty much the same thing, we'll say, you can have little nuances or whatever.
Sure.
They decide, not the insurance company, they decide, well, this one we're going to cover. These 2 we're not. And the person can still get it technically, but realistically they can't. They pay $600 or $40 copay. So they've told you and your doctor basically that out of these 3, this is the one you're on. Ultimately, that's typically okay. They're in the same class. They're going to work the same way. If something really goes wrong, allergy, side effects, there are mechanisms by which you can maybe get the other one covered. But point is, they decide amongst those 3. How do they decide? They decide not by what's the most expensive overall. How much money do they get back?
Right.
$600 drug, you'll kick us back $200, you'll kick us back $150. We're going with the $200 guy.
Yep.
It's that simple. And then what occurs is that money is supposed to go back to the insurer that, hey, we're doing this for you. Well, remember now the PBM is the insurer and how much of it goes back. And now that's very muddy, again, with the lack of transparency about where that money really is going to and what the point of it is. There was an example this week, being a pharmacist working in a pharmacy, Entresto is a pretty big medication, okay? And it just went generic. And I tried 8 patients. This is literally just the last week or 2.
Yeah.
8 patients, 7 of them the generic was not covered. The generic only was covered in 1 of those 8. It's been approved by the FDA. It's a valid generic. It's AB rated, substitutable by any measure, except the PBM decided they're only covering the brand. The brand is about $650-ish. The generic, our cost was below $100. It was about $80 for the bottle. So they're not paying it.
Yeah.
They're not paying for it. And why? Because they have some arrangement with Entresto that hasn't expired yet that they get a rebate back. There's no rebates on generics.
Yep.
And they also, what I saw too, is it gets a little muddy because these drug companies are so big. So we're not just talking about Entresto. You're talking about whatever else is in the portfolio of that company.
Yep.
So all right. So we've gotten pushed to the wall on Entresto. It's been out for 6 months. If you don't give us another 6 months, we're going to cut rebates on 2 of the other meds that are on your formulary. It's just crazy that's where we are dealing with pricing.
Yeah.
And then you see what we're up against to try to start to get these numbers down. It is very difficult.